Hi, my name is Mike Hartington. I'm a developer at Ionic, and today we're going to be talking about building mobile apps with Vue and Ionic. If you have any questions, feel free to put them down in the little chat bubble, or you could reach out to me on Twitter. My handle's mhartington. So, for those who do not know, Ionic is a UI framework for building mobile apps, progressive web apps, or even desktop apps. We give you all of the core components that you would expect to get from the native SDKs, just ours are built with web technologies. So this means you get access to things like buttons, cards, list items, anything that you can expect to get that will help you build a mobile app faster. In addition to that, we also provide controls for animations and gestures so your apps feel engaging and fun for your users to use. On top of that, we want to make sure that your components feel at home to these native platforms. So we'll automatically update the component itself to feel right at home for iOS and for Android. This means that you'll get a different set of animations and styles and interactions for gestures on iOS, and for Android, you'll get something that feels right at home for that platform. But we realize that not every component needs to be exactly like how we say it should be. We also give you an extensible API to customize them to your heart's content, so that way your apps actually appear more like your own company's branding versus just another Ionic app. So this means not only do we get the lowest, smallest component that you could expect, like a little atom. In this case, we have something like badges, item notes, buttons, but more complex items like cards, which are built up of several components all together. So pretty wide range of what you can build with Ionic. Now, if you've been to a VueConf before, if you've been to any Vue conference before where Ionic has been represented at, you probably have heard of us before. A couple of years ago, we released our very first early access of Ionic and Vue, followed shortly by an alpha later that year here at VueConf Toronto, where we were saying, hey, we actually have a package that you can install, try it out. Sometime after that, we released the beta, which we felt was a little bit more stable, more user-friendly, and you could actually start building some pretty awesome stuff with it. We wanted customer feedback. We wanted people to try it out. Then after that, there really was nothing. We kind of were radio silent for a little bit. If you asked us what's the status on Ionic Vue, we were kind of like, yeah, we're working on it. But really, what we were trying to figure out was how to not solve the same problem over and over for every single framework. Ionic works with not only Vue, but many frameworks out there, or even no framework. For us, we want to make sure that we were being efficient as possible with our development time, and that we were solving a problem once, and then being able to reuse that solution across frameworks. Not only that, we had this little thing called Vue 3, which we were eagerly awaiting, and we want to make sure that we were ready to support Vue 3 and that we could take advantage of all the new features and improvements that came with that upgrade. So fast forward to 2020, a couple weeks ago, I can actually say, we released Ionic Vue finally. I know, bad pun, I'm sorry. But we were happy to finally release Ionic Vue and get something out there that people who had been asking us for years could use and be excited about. So instead of sitting here for the remainder of my time just going over slides, I figured let's go into a demo and actually build something. So I have my terminal here, and inside of it, I'm just going to say, let's create a new project. We'll run Ionic start. So we have the Ionic CLI, which gives us access to this start command. We can run Ionic start, pick our framework of choice. In this case, we're going to pick a Vue. We can give it a nice name. So we can say VueConf TO. And then we could pick the different template that we want to start off of. For this case, we could pick tabs, side menu, blank, list. We're pretty self-descriptive about what our templates are based off of. since we already are on a time limit here, I'm not going to try to do this to download all of the internet. So let's just go to a pre-created project that I have. So VueConf Toronto, I'm going to open up another terminal window, and let's just open up our editor. So I'm using Vim. I know I'd hate to be that guy, but you could use whatever editor you want. And here we have a standard Vue project setup. You can see that we have have our config files for browserless, for ESLint, Babel, Cypress, and Jest. All these, instead of putting them in a package JSON, we just have them split out into their own dedicated files. Inside of our source directory, we have the main.ts, and yes, we are using TypeScript for our projects. This is probably one of the bigger changes that we enforce, and we're giving you an opinionated approach to building apps with Vue. We think TypeScript is probably the best thing that you could do for yourself. So we automatically give you Vue in your project. If you don't like this, you could just change the projects to .js instead of .ts. But inside of our main TS file, we have our create app import. We're importing the app component, our router, and then we have the main entry point for Ionic Vue that we're importing, as well as some styles that are just core CSS files for Ionic. We have this variables file, so that way you can start customizing your app in its appearance and just start changing a few variables here and there to actually change the overall appearance. And then we have the bootstrapping process for our app. So our app.vue is really where the main magic happens, I guess, where we're just going to import this Ion app component, this Ion router outlet, and start to render out the routes for our component. Similar to Vue routers, router Vue, we have the Ion router outlet where we can just render out all the components that match up a given path. So let's first look at the router then to figure out what we're doing here. So our router actually wraps the Vue router package. We worked with Eduardo to figure out what the best way forward for this would be. Instead of creating something that sits instead of creating something that uses the Vue router directly, we decided let's have our users use this Ionic Vue router, and then we can just provide the correct methods to Vue router for them, maintaining some sense of stability, and as well as providing the animations that Ionic apps are known for. But the router configuration for this is actually exactly the same as Vue router. So we have our path entries for our redirects, we have the main path for this tabs component, and then some child routes that we can render inside of it. Each one of these are just using dynamic imports to import each one of our components. And if we were to run Ionic serve in another terminal window, we could get a look at what this app and see that all we have is just this tabs-based application that most users of mobile apps these days would be familiar with. So let's take a look at this first component for tab 1. So if we go to tab1.vue, what we have here is a standard Vue component with our template tags and then the script tag for the component logic. So in here we are using the component Ion page, Ion header, and then Ion content to start breaking up our whole component into meaningful pieces. So for instance, Ion header and Ion toolbar and Ion title, we can assume that based on their names, they're going to create a toolbar, and it's going to be at the top of the page, the head of the page, and that this is going to be the page title rendered in this Ion title. Pretty self-explanatory. Further on, we have this Ion content, which is going to be the main content area of our app. We can render out some components in here. We're saying this is our Explore container component. So we can change this from tab 1 page to tab 1 component, save, have that automatically update inside of our app, and life is good. This is a fairly typical Vue app. Further on, let's do some formatting real quick. Inside of the script tag, we have our imports for the components that we are using in this page. So this is going to allow us to get the smallest bundle possible by only importing the components that we need per given page. Then we can define these components inside of our components entry in the component logic itself. So we have a pretty nice setup that is, again, fairly typical to any Vue app that you are going to be using. Now, this takes care of the actual app portion of our demo. What if we wanted to actually deploy this to a native app, right? This is building mobile apps with Vue and Ionic. So let's go down to our terminal again, and we're going to just stop the library load server and then run npm run build, which is just running the Vue CLI service to build our app. So the app build was successful. We can start to add native capabilities to our app by utilizing a project that we automatically opt you into called Capacitor. Now, Capacitor is our native runtime for generating native iOS and Android apps, and also bridging capabilities that exist on those platforms to the web. So for this, we can run npx cap add Android, which is just going to create a new Android project for us. So we'll let this install its dependencies. It's using native Android libraries under the hood. So we are just building a quite actual native Android project. And then we get some feedback from our terminal saying that we can just run npx cap open Android, which will open up Android Studio for us to deploy this app to our device. Now, if Android Studio looks intimidating to you, don't worry, it's intimidating to me, but I'm told that it's just like WebStorm if you have used that before, or any JetBrains product, because it uses the same engine under the hood, IntelliJ. So from here, we have this little play button at the top where we can just hit tap to the emulator. Now, the emulator was booted up already before, so it's actually pretty quick at restarting. So we'll just give it a moment to start up our new app. And then we can see our app running on the simulator, changing tabs, changing our actual routing, and showing up the components that we updated. Pretty cool. But we can take this a step further and actually start developing for reals on the simulator and access device APIs. So what we're going to do is actually run Ionic cap run Android -- live reload -- external. So we're utilizing Ionic's CLI instead of the Vue CLI service to run on our device. And we're going to enable live reload to have these changes automatically applied. So it's going to call the Vue CLI service, start up our live reload server, which will be great. We can hit the kind of stop and then rebuild button again. Go back to our emulator. We can see that it started up. We have had a little warning down at the bottom saying that we are loading it up from some sort of external host. And what we can do is come over to our tab 1 component and start making changes. So I said we had Explorer container named tab 1 component. Let's change this back to tab 1 page. We'll write, and then we can have these changes automatically apply to our app. Now this is pretty cool, but we can take this a step further. So let's delete our Explorer component. We're going to create a paragraph tag. Inside of that, we're going to create a variable called lock, and we'll just say my location is, and then we'll put an ion button underneath that, which will have a click handler saying get location and some text that says, where am I? Further on down, we can delete the import statement for the Explorer component, add an import for our ion button, and then in the components, we can just replace this with ion button and save, just to make sure that we have everything working. Looks pretty good. Now let's add 2 import statements here as well. So first, we're going to import from Vue, we're going to import ref, and then further on down, we're going to import from capacitor core, and we're going to import the plugins object from this library. This is going to give us access to all of the native device features that Capacitor provides. So down here, what we'll do is we'll make use of setup, and we're going to do our magic in here. So we'll say const lock equals ref, and we'll just pass in an empty object since we're not going to use anything yet. And then we'll create a new method called get location, which is going to be a function. And inside of this, we're going to first destructure something off of the plugins object from Capacitor. So this, we're just going to destructure the geolocation API, and then we'll convert our function to be asynchronous. Forgot to do that beforehand. And we'll just say const res equals await geolocation dot get current position. So we're just saying wait the geolocation, get current position. We could use promises if we want as well. Async await is pretty clean. Once we have this result back from geolocation, we will say lock.value is going to equal a new object where we'll have some lat key, and that is going to equal the results.coordinates.latitude. And then we'll have a long key, which is going to equal res.coordinates.longitude. Cool. So this looks like it's working pretty well. Last thing that we need to do is just return our lock and get location. We'll save. Cool, we see the binding appear in our template, so we know that it's there. And what I'll do is just make this a little bit bigger if I can. And we'll say, where am I? Get my location. And we'll have the location printed out into our bindings. If we hadn't done this before in another demo, we would get prompted to add the permissions or accept the native permissions for this app. So this is a little bit of a whirlwind tour. We could take this app that we have now, and we could also deploy it to iOS if we wanted to, if we had that installed. Let's get back to the slides to kind of figure out what else we can do. So back to the slides, Ionic and Vue, pretty awesome. It's a whirlwind tour, I know, but we only have a certain amount of time to be able to go over this. So what I'm going to do is just kind of wrap up with talking about how Ionic Vue is, basically a perfect match. You get the simplicity of Vue and the composability of Vue, as well as the simplicity of Ionic's components and Capacitor for providing that native UI. Honestly, Ionic and Vue, really, it's been a joy to build out and to actually build with. And I really encourage you to try it out if you have any progressive web app needs, or if you want to use the native bindings as well. If you are interested in getting started, check out our docs. We have a dedicated overview page, ionicframework.com/doc/view overview. I know it's a mouthful. We also have a whole overview section for Capacitor if you are really focused on the native aspect of it. Fun fact is you could use Capacitor without Ionic, and you could use Ionic without Capacitor. The two projects aren't mutually exclusive, so you can use them however you need inside of your app. And if you're already using Ionic and Capacitor, but you're getting stuck, check out our forum. We have this incredibly active forum with tons of users that are asking questions every day, and we're helping them build their apps. I know since we released Ionic Vue, the number of Vue questions and people getting started and having questions about Vue have increased. So if you are a Vue person and you want to help out answering some questions about Vue, please join. We'd love to have you there. Also, we have an upcoming event at Ionic ourselves that is a dedicated live session on YouTube where we're going to be going over building an Ionic app in Vue in a lot greater detail. Definitely check it out. If you want to screenshot this little QR code, you can get the URL for that. Otherwise, we will provide links and resources afterwards. But other than that, thank you so much.